Chris Pyle, your lay leader today. Welcome to you all. I'd like us to begin today's service by acknowledging and celebrating today, June 19th, also known as Juneteenth. Although the Civil War ended on April 9th, 1865, it wasn't until this date, June 19th, 1865, that freedom finally came for the more than 250,000 enslaved people in the state of Texas, when some 2,000 Union troops arrived in Galveston Bay. The Army announced that Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which had been signed on January 1st, 1863, freed all enslaved people by executive decree. This day came to be known as Juneteenth by the newly freed people of Texas. I would like to share with you this quote from former President Barack Obama on the significance of this day. Juneteenth has never been a celebration of victory or an acceptance of the way things are. It is a celebration of progress. It's an affirmation that despite the most painful parts of our history, change is possible, and there still is so much work to do. These words are by Albert Schweitzer. At times, our light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. We now light our chalice here in the sanctuary and invite you to light a chalice, candle, or lamp where you are too. Our speaker today is Catherine Hart, the spiritual counselor at Hospice of the Fisher Home in Amherst. She's been in that role for 4 years and has long enjoyed supporting people as they explore issues of faith and its impact in trying times. She has personal experience with loss, losing 2 partners to cancer and both her parents to dementia. Her faith community is Protestant UCC. She has gained much support and insight from Buddhist teachings and meditation practices. She and her husband Mark live in South Deerfield. They have 2 young adult children who live across the country. Prior to her hospice work, she was a medical social worker working in community settings for many years.
Good morning. I'm honored to be with you this morning on this important day in the history of our country, Juneteenth. I'd like to begin with a quote by Krista Tippett, creator and host of the spiritual podcast On Being. The quote describes the teachings of Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen and that of many other great spiritual teachers. Living whole, living well, is not about eradicating our wounds and weaknesses. In fact, she says, the way we deal with losses, large and small, shapes our capacity to be present to all of our experiences. My sermon today is entitled, When Hardship is Good. None of us wants hardship or invites hardship, but unfortunately, it is a reality of being human. I know the reality of loss well. I'm the spiritual counselor at Hospice of the Fisher Home, and in the past 4 years since I have been working there, we have served well over 600 patients and their families as they face the end of life. We serve people at our 9-bed hospice residence on North Pleasant Street, and we also have a robust community program serving people in their homes and in facilities. As well as working with loss professionally, I have also experienced personal loss. The death of my husband to cancer when I was 29. Years later, a breakup of the family. More deaths over time, including my dear parents, who died within the last few years. Both had dementia, and I witnessed their slow demise over months and years. And there's some good news. I'm here today. I have hope for the future. My family is back together. Yes, the world is troubled in many enormous ways, and yet there is so much that is good. I'm really happy to be here this morning to share some of my thoughts and experiences with you. I'll start with a little story. Recently, I was feeling the weight of all that's happening in the world that's difficult, as well as my own recent loss of my mother. She died at Hospice of the Fisher Home this past September. It has not been easy for me to grieve, even though I work for hospice. I felt a need to get away, and last month I went away to the mountains of Vermont with my childhood friend Brenda. Initially, while there, I felt numb, coming down off the rushing, the accomplishing, the dealing that is often a part of daily life. But eventually, as I call it, the trance of the daily grind wore off. The safety of my friend Brenda's caring presence allowed important feelings to arise. Tears and eventually words came. As we talked, she compassionately listened, and I noticed a deepening and a shifting taking place. As my personal pain and my own fears for the future of our world bubbled up and out through my tears, a shift happened. How was it that there was movement from frozen to tears to hope? It is that question that I hope to address, both on a personal and a societal level. How do we move forward under the weight of hardship in this world, personally and collectively? So today, I humbly offer 3 important paths that come to mind. I'm sure they won't be new to you, but perhaps they can be food for thought as you contemplate your own answer to this question. First, may we turn to the great teachers and social movements for inspiration. Juneteenth is a perfect time to do this. Yes, we have a long ways to go, but look how far we've come. And what has it taken to get here? Patience, time, hard work, more patience, and the dedication of many devoted people and leaders. May they be our inspiration and hope. At a time when so much seems wrong in the world, one of my inspirational leaders is Joanna Macy. She has a way of framing this time in history as a time of great potential. And what does it take to get on that hopeful train? Being courageous in our loving, as illustrated by her words as follows. In the face of impermanence and death, it takes courage to love the things of this world and to believe that praising them is our noblest calling. Secondly, may we stick together. Never underestimate the power of caring presence and the power of community. It, in and of itself, has great power to transform, like my childhood friend Brenda offered me that weekend in Vermont. I left that weekend inspired and ready and clear about what action I need to take to move forward in this life. It is so hopeful for me to be here among all of you today and to see your community in action. I thank you for your generous work. You have housed the homeless, you feed the hungry, and you support one another through thick and thin. Wherever two or more of you are gathered in their name, there is love. It's natural that sometimes we avoid connecting with others when we face trouble. It's natural that we self-isolate as a way to protect ourselves. But as COVID has taught us, being alone presents its own problems. As mammals, we are meant to be together. We are meant to comfort one another and to provide solace and safety. Joanna Macy asks us, with whom are you walking the road ahead? For there are ditches on either side that we can fall into. One is the ditch of despair. The other is the ditch of panic. If we link arms as we move forward, those we are with can guide us when we get off track. I'd like to share a story about one of your parishioners who was with us at the Fisher home that illustrates the importance of togetherness. Alice was beloved by many of you. The staff at the Fisher home had alerted me to the fact that she seemed particularly lost one day. One of the things I love about my job is sometimes I get to just be a friend. So on that day, I invited Alice into our dining room to have a cup of tea with me. And I said to her, Alice, what have you done to get through some of the rougher times in life? She looked at me with her bright eyes, and she stood up right next to me with her tiny frame, and she put her arms around me, and she said, "This is what I do. I reach out for contact with another." We at the Fisher home will never forget Alice, because like her, reaching out with care is something we try to live and work by. Life may not be easy, but if we can stick together in the tough moments, if it lightens someone's load even just a little bit, then it's worth it. My third and final point is that it's time to be brave. And rather than constantly resisting what is here, let's take a moment and be present with it. We live in such a fast-paced world. It's such a comfort to be here and to see people sitting with one another. We as humans love jumping into action. But if you look closely, you can see that often we are operating from programmed hardware to survive. We fight, we strike, we blame, we judge, we run. So let's take a moment right now. Let's be together here in the quiet. I invite you to just close your eyes where you are with me. Take a breath. No problem to solve. Just here. Just allow that experience of being here in this moment envelop you for a few seconds. Thank you. We are called in these times to take time to be. Be still and know that I am God. Take a break from being human doings and be human beings. Yes, there are problems. Yes, we all have faults. Yes, this place can be so messy. We are imperfect. But it's important to take the time to sit right here in the middle of it all. Because it's right here in this present moment that an innate intelligence reveals itself. Some might call it God. Some might call it higher power, wisdom, or truth. But whatever you call it, space, quiet, and receptivity are needed for it to arise, to be seen and heard. Gandhi himself was known for taking 1 day per week to sit quietly in prayer and meditation. Perhaps it was this that allowed his action to be so powerful. I have a story that I'd like to share about my mother's experience of dying at Hospice of the Fisher Home. Mom experienced confusion not only from her own dementia, but also from medications that helped her to be more comfortable. She was in and out of consciousness, in and out of dreams. I remember one day when I was sitting at her bedside, she woke up. Her eyes were bright and wide. "Were we in the water?" she said. "I was swimming. Were you swimming too?" The waves were huge. I was having trouble staying afloat. But then I realized, wait, I know how to swim. I can float. I don't need to struggle. And she relaxed and she was fine. Opening to what is, releasing the struggle. Now is the time for us to remember to be human composters, transformers of that which is difficult. It's time to remember that it is in the quiet, the sitting with, the patience of allowing the composting process that we as individuals and as a society can reap the benefits. And as we strengthen these muscles to be with what is, we not only give those around us the gift of our presence, but we also prepare ourselves for the eventual reality of our own death. Thank you for your attention this morning. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Thank you for your good works. I hope that I will see you again. I invite you to come by to the Fisher Home or call for a tour. In closing, I'll share a Buddhist prayer said often by a well-known meditation teacher, Tara Brach. May whatever arises serve the awakening of wisdom and compassion. Amen.
With genius and grace, African American slaves transformed bitter human experience into a beautiful art form called the spiritual. One of the most haunting spirituals, "Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child," was likely born out of heart-wrenching tragedy of the forcible separation of parent from child. That's from the story behind African American spiritual that evokes the cry of the motherless child, posted by Deborah Lou Harder on June 15th, 2019. This is from the classic Slave Narratives, edited by Henry Louis Gaze Jr. As Harriet Jacobs, an escaped slave, wrote, "On one of those sale days, I saw a mother lead 7 children to the auction block. She knew some of them would be taken from her, but they took all. The children were sold to a slave trader, and their mother was bought by a man in her own town. Before night, her children were all far away. She begged the trader to tell her where he intended to take them. This he refused to do. Like a motherless child, sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from my home, a long way from my home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost done. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost done. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost done. A long way from my home, a long way from my home. True believer, true believer,